The last episode ended with Bing leaving the bar, walking down Walking Street in Angeles City, thinking, what do? I can't go home, and I can't do this bar thing. I mean, what the hell do I do with my life? Let's continue. So she just kept on walking just aimlessly, and she walked far from Walking Street. She had walked down toward MacArthur Avenue and took a left and then a right, and she just kept walking. She eventually sat on the sidewalk, just wondering, what was she going to do? The dilemma was obvious, okay? She couldn't stay here in Angeles under any circumstances, and she could not go home under any circumstances. The pain inside Bing at this moment was almost too much to handle. So she sat down on the sidewalk and she just started crying quietly to herself. And then something happened. A foreigner approached her. He kneeled down to her as she sat there on the sidewalk crying. He said something. According to Bing, he said something. She's not sure what he said, but he did put his hand on her back as he spoke. Now, in hindsight, she recalls, the man probably asked her if she needed any help, as she was just a little girl there crying on the sidewalk. But in the moment, Bing didn't realize what his intention really was. So as the man put his hand on her back, she quickly stood up and went back to the only familiar place she knew of, which was the bar, and to her friend, Mary. She felt much safer when Mary was around, because Mary knew the area, she knew how to get around, and she knew where she was going. Anyway, as soon as she got back to the bar, she went straight to Mary and told her what had happened regarding the foreigner approaching her. And Mary's response was she laughed. Mary said, he probably just wanted you to go back to his place. Now, I mean, Mary didn't know that Bing was crying when he approached. Bing didn't tell her. Now, he assumed you were a freelancer, at least, hoped you were. But just remember, I mean, look, Mary said, it's up to you if you really want to go with any guy or not. Girls often say no to men if they're too old or too ugly. It's no big deal, Mary said. Bing thought that it was reassuring to hear Mary say that she did have a choice. She had options. However, I mean, folks, this is so far, it was just too much for little Bing, okay? Now, she asked Mary for the key to the room. She wanted to go back to the room. As Mary knew, Bing just wanted some alone time. But Bing she had something else on her mind, okay? So she went back to the room and she began to prepare her stuff to head back home, back to the village in Leyte. Bing thought, that her family had money problems beyond belief, but she had to find another way. There has to be another way. There's got to be another way. So Bing, she started packing her bags. And then when she was done, she just lay in bed. She just closed her eyes. I mean, what is she supposed to think at this point, right? Anyway, she just fell asleep. And then Mary and the other girls, the girls that weren't chosen to go back to some stranger's hotel room. These girls, they got back to the room late, obviously. By that time, Bing had fallen asleep, but she was awoken by the arrival of the girls coming back home. So now everyone's home, and the girls all talked a little, and they tried to reassure Bing that she will get used to it. She'll get used to Angeles. She'll get used to the bar. At some point, it's going to feel like home here. They all went through this at the beginning. When any province girl or farm girl or mountain girl arrives in Angeles for the first time, they are all it's like a fish out of water. No girls actually want to be here in Angeles, okay? I mean, especially at the beginning. Bing knew these girls were speaking the truth, that this was the hard time. It would pass. This hard time would pass. She was aware of this, but she still felt she had to return back to her home, to her family, where her comfort zone, basically. She needed to clear her head. So the next morning, Bing, She borrowed bus fare from Mary and she got herself to the Angelus bus terminal. She got the very next bus heading home. And, while on the bus, she was just thinking to herself the entire trip. She felt like a failure. She remembers this. She felt regret that she didn't at least stay longer. This is her feeling on the bus. At least one more day. She gave up too quickly, but now, she was heading home. She was on the bus. There was no going back. But look, her desire to be home, it outweighed her desire to do a U-turn and go back to Angelus. Not that she even had the money to do that. She hadn't even told her family that she was heading back home. And mainly because there was no way to contact them at the time. This is, the late 90s, but also because, she did feel guilty arriving home penniless. She felt she'd be giving them bad news if she did call them. She wanted to avoid the inevitable bad news, or at least delay it, because, they have enough bad news as it is. So she did get herself home, okay? The 30 hours went by on the bus and she did get herself home, thanks to Mary giving her the money. But there wasn't much fanfare at home. But basically everything was familiar as it was before, including all the old problems. Being said, in hindsight, I don't know what I expected by heading home. I guess I was hoping for a miracle to happen while on the bus. Being at home, during the day, she felt useless. Just a useless little girl. Every night, she just cried. She cried herself to sleep. She felt guilty that, she could not do what had to be done. She had the ability to do it. She just couldn't do it. She needed to help her family and she was just not able to do it. She just kept hoping for a miracle, folks, and praying to the statue of Jesus. This was the only way she knew how to make a miracle happen. She prayed hard with all of her might. She just wanted a miracle to happen. That's it. One day, she went to the local church to talk to the priest about her problems and to ask him about her future. The priest gave her some wise advice. He said, "Return to where you just came from, because within 2 years, you will meet a rich foreign husband and all your problems will be gone." Now, unfortunately for Bing, he didn't tell her how to get this done, okay? Like how to meet the guy, how to get him to marry her, where exactly they were gonna meet. That was on her to figure out. But this did bring the strength for Bing to take some action and do whatever it was she needed to do. The priest gave Bing a special blessing to give her good luck and, of course, some confidence, the courage to reach her dreams. And we all know what her dream is. She wants to marry a foreigner. After meeting the priest, Bing walked back to her home, her childhood home where she was born and raised. She walked home with the full intention of heading back to Angelus the very next day. But this time with a great muster to actually do the unthinkable. For the first night, Bing went to sleep without crying. The next morning, Bing walked to her uncle's house. You know what she asked for? She asked her uncle for the bus fare again to get back to Angelus. This was going to be hard because he had already given her the bus fare for the last trip. As Bing walked to him with her newfound brevity, okay, she looked him straight in the eyes and says, "I made a mistake to come home too soon, and I assure you that the very next visit I will pay you back." Uncle didn't really say anything. He just looked at the ground. He slipped her some money and he said, "Good luck." After her uncle gave her the money, she went immediately to the bus terminal there in Tacloban by herself and she got the first bus back to Angelus City. 30 hours goes by. It's a long bus ride back to Angelus City, but she arrives at the Doway bus terminal in Angelus and she went straight to the same bar. She called Mary a little bit outside. She wanted to tell her in confidence about her new commitment, about wanting to work, this time for real. No more observing. She wanted to start right now. Together, the two of them, they talked to the bar manager and they all agreed Bing would start right now. But there's only one thing she needs to do first. She needed to head back to the room and change her clothes and put on some makeup. So right away, Mary brought her back back to the room and they put on the clothes, they put on the makeup, and now Bing, then she looked in the mirror and right away realized that this kind of look did not suit her as much as it did suit the other girls. Mary said that, when you do this every day, you will just get used to it, okay? So Bing, she took a deep breath and together with Mary, they walked back to the bar. So now Bing is sitting in the bar, okay, and she's expecting a foreigner to talk to her, she's expecting a foreigner to walk in and talk to her. But to her surprise, not a single foreigner talked to her. Nobody approached her for the rest of the day. And suddenly, Bing, she didn't feel so scared of these guys after all. I mean, now she really wanted them to talk to her. Then, 2 more days passed. Okay, and not a single foreigner sat down to talk to her. She was starting to feel a little bit self-conscious, like she's not pretty enough, like the other girls are sort of better than her, sexier than her, but actually being realized by herself, after pondering it, that, it was partly her own fault. Nobody talked to her because she just stared at the floor all the time. She wasn't putting herself out there. Slowly Bing is starting to wake up and smell the roses about reality. So anyway, Mary, what a great friend Mary is. She offered to bring the next foreigner that entered the bar over to sit down with Bing. Sort of a way to break the ice for Bing because she's new to this, right? But Bing said no. Even though, she did kind of want Mary to do it anyway, she said no. She just felt like it would be awkward. And, she wanted the guy to approach her because he liked her, not because someone forced him to sit down next to her. Anyways, finally on day 4, a foreigner sat down next to Bing. The next problem was that Bing, she could not speak English. In order to talk to this foreign man, she's got to speak English, right? I mean, the guy is not going to speak her language. So what happened is the bar manager joined them and explained to Bing that the guy, she could translate for her and the guy. But the guy said, that wasn't necessary. Don't worry about it. They could just try their best to communicate. And if they can't, that's okay, the foreigner said. We'll just look at each other. So Bing felt comfortable with the guy. He was a laid back kind of guy, and they did communicate a bit with her limited English. She liked him. She liked the guy and she felt comfortable with him. But then the guy, he stood up, and he walked away. And Bing thought that was that. This was the first time that she ever spent any time with a foreigner. And it was her first lady drink, by the way. Her first, money earned there in Angeles. And this helped her to feel a bit more comfortable around these guys. It helped her to connect the dots between foreign men and earning money. Anyway, she's feeling more comfortable around the foreign guys, these American guys. However, Bing was surprised what happened next. When the guy walked away from Bing, he just walked over to the bar manager and asked the manager if he could bring Bing to his hotel. The manager told the guy, that Bing was new and that she probably was not ready to go back to his place. But, I'll talk to Bing, she'll talk to Bing and see how she feels about it. So the manager sat down next to Bing in the same chair where the foreigner was and explained the situation to Bing and asked her if she was able to do it or not. And it was her choice. If Bing did choose to sleep with the guy, he would pay Bing 500 pesos, okay? He would pay the bar fine separately, but Bing herself would get 500 pesos. So Bing kind of felt, she kind of felt pressured into doing it, even though she knew she didn't have to. But what happened was that, she just felt her head sort of go up and down. So not meaning to say yes, not meaning to say no, she just felt that's what she had to do. It was just like the thing that everyone was doing there in the bar and in Angeles. It was that kind of atmosphere. Anyway, Bing thought in hindsight, like she thought, how could I say no? So anyway, Bing she stood up, she's just doing what she thinks she has to do here, folks. She stood up and just waited for someone to prompt her to move. So the manager gave, an okay symbol with her hand to the guy, that she was willing. And she said something to the guy and the guy walked over, grabbed her hand, grabbed Bing's hand, and they walked out of the bar together.